Okay, thank you very much and welcome to the New Delhi Network Society Meetup. I am very honored and very happy that you are here. We held these meetings in London, in Paris, in New York, in Amsterdam, in Buenos Aires, in San Francisco, in Rome, in Milan. After New Delhi, next Sunday we will be in Bangalore, and next month we will be in Seville, Spain, in Athens, Greece, and in Shanghai, China, and in Guernsey, which is a small 60,000 people island between France and the UK in the Channel Islands. And so it is very interesting also to compare what a 1.2 billion nation like India thinks about technology and what a 60,000 people nation thinks about technology. What are the differences? We are streaming live and recording this event. After maybe about 15 minutes, 20 minutes introduction, we will move to a conversation. And my introduction will be the basics, and I will welcome your input and your thinking about how you think the provocations and the hypotheses that I am explaining or I'm introducing impact India. What is the relationship, in your opinion, between these new technologies and Indian policy, whether they are opposed, hindered, neutral, or promoted, and further by either local or central government, and whether promoting them or opposing them is good or bad. You know, I might be talking about technologies that you think India should not adopt, this is an exercise that we are also doing elsewhere, in Argentina, for example, and in other places, in order to create what would at a given point become what we call the Network Society Readiness Index. And we will then publish a ranking of both corporations and nations on this index. And of course, we believe that being higher ranked on the index is good, but somebody could say, no, actually, I am thinking different. So I will now start the presentation, and then we will move forward as I described. My name is David Orban, and if you have a microphone, I would love you to use that. No, that's fine. That's fine. I think it is okay. I can raise my voice. Sure, go ahead. So I will explaining to the recording that we are now shifting the table and people are coming a little bit closer. Actually, what I will do then is to sit myself, if you don't mind. And I will just stay like this. So my name is David Orban, and I have been speaking about these topics for several years. I look back and I started talking about this probably 8-10 years ago, and there are some historical recordings too. I am on the faculty of Singularity University and an advisor in California, where we study exponential technologies and how they impact society and the enterprise and the lives of individuals. And since the impact of those technologies very clearly was complementary to the vision that I was describing already, I decided that the time was right to formally incorporate what is now a London-based nonprofit called Network Society Research. We have 22 ambassadors in 17 countries around the world. And what we talk about is socio-economic evolution. Starting from the understanding of how computers get better and better, what people in technology call Moore's Law, and how, starting from a few thousand computers, we are now going through hundreds of millions of personal computers, but billions of mobile phones. And soon we will enter an era of autonomous machines that people will not recharge or configure or update, but these will necessarily decide on their own their way of working, because very, very soon we will be surrounded by tens or hundreds or thousands of billions of devices, each of them as smart as this supercomputer in my hand. The fact is that people always designed moral systems and understanding how to create, or were thriving or aspiring to create a just society. If you were a slave in Egypt and were working on the pyramids, and you had a sliver of energy before falling asleep by night, certainly most of the time you were thinking about how wrong it was that your life was as miserable and that you could do nothing about it. And sometimes there would be rebellions. Spartacus is very famous from the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago to have tried to rebel against being a slave. But that rebellion was suffocated as well, because at the time it wasn't possible, the technological basis was not there to make that change sustainable. They dreamed of it, but they couldn't realize it. Today, in our society that is globally connected, I set up this meeting on Facebook with the help of a few friends, and word of the meeting spread from Italy, where I was before coming here, to Korea, where one of our guests' sister learned about it, to Delhi to make sure that she could attend. This is a beautiful, very simple example of how the world is globally connected and how we can act on that global connectedness. And the world we created is really different from before. Paul Crutzen is a Nobel Prize winning chemist who discovered the ozone hole that was created by the gas escaping our refrigerators and our deodorants, and it changed the chemical composition of the Earth's atmosphere. And realizing the power of humanity, he called our geological era, characterized by the presence of man on Earth, the Anthropocene. And Daniel Dennett, a philosopher, created this chart that shows how in an eye blink 10,000 years ago, the mix in two groups of the terrestrial vertebrates biomass, from 99% being represented by wildlife. When we came here to India, we wanted to see the elephants. It's 2 days that I'm in India. I haven't seen a single elephant. Well, there is a reason for that. Because today, instead of being 99%, everything you see on National Geographic television is 2% of the terrestrial vertebrate biomass. The 98% remainder is humans, our pets, And yes, I have seen a lot of dogs. They thrive here. And there are cattle. And I have seen a couple of cows too. That was cool. Now, clearly, this is a totally unsustainable situation. And until we had new continents to ruin, like Europeans did with America or with Australia or whatever else, we could ignore what economists call externalities. We could just do whatever we were doing, and if we needed more wood, more meat, more wheat, more minerals, we could go and find another continent to ravage. However, realizing our situation as unsustainable, we really have to ask ourselves, are we better than the dinosaurs? They didn't have telescopes, but the American Congress just voted to turn the telescopes off that were monitoring near-Earth asteroids. And so we will be blind when the next asteroid comes and hits Earth. Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, had to put down his own personal money to turn those telescopes on again. So hopefully we will see the asteroid coming. And then whether we can do about it something or not depends on how our engineering is advanced, but at least we will have the means to know our destiny. And metaphorically speaking, our mental telescopes are our tools of science and reason, and we have to ask ourselves, are we using these tools at their optimal level? Could we use them better? And there are people who are happy not only to use them less, but actually turn back the dial. You know, in America, there is a very strong creationist movement that is censoring textbooks, saying, no, the theory of evolution is just a theory, that we should not teach it without teaching our kids also what is the religious explanation of how we came here. And with all due respect, religious explanations are not going to stop the asteroid. It's guaranteed. People can start praying as much as they want. If the asteroid comes and we are not ready, we will be gone as the dinosaurs are gone. Also, we in this global world have the guarantee of multicultural approaches, where we are here in India, eating Indian food, dressed in Western garbs, listening to Western music, going out and finding a temple with a traditionally dressed person and coexisting is the future, because a homogenized world is necessarily a dictatorship, and we don't want that to happen. So if we want to avoid that, we have to explore the varieties of organizations in the society. Also, this variety is what guarantees evolutionary fitness. It is what allows us to experiment with different ways of organizing our societies and our lives to find what is resilient and what can survive different challenges, whether it is Ebola, whether it is climate change, whether it is poverty, inequality, and we have to really overcome the cages of old type thinking, where, in my opinion, it was certainly the best way to organize an enterprise or organize a society, a company, a corporation, to make it centrally, hierarchically set up. When you needed to tell somebody, this is what you do from A to Z, and you could not rely on that person being educated, on that person being proactive, on that person delegating mechanical tasks to machines and being freed up to think for him or herself, then this was the best way to do it. But today, once again, in a globally connected world, there is an alternative way of organizing both economic enterprise and social organizations, which is what I express in what I call the fundamental thesis of the network society. That, and
I will read this verbatim. Widespread social and economic change only happens once a solid technological foundation evolves to make it sustainable. Fully distributed and decentralized technologies have emerged to achieve superior results with respect to centralized and hierarchical ones. And three, that these unstoppable technologies undermine and disrupt the nation state's supporting pillars with the resulting socioeconomic organization that is the network society. Now, I don't mean that nations will disappear. I don't mean to preach revolution or anarchy. But what I do mean is that from an evolutionary point of view, we can compare and we can watch in 10 years, in 20 years, how this is being embraced, and then check whether those societies that embrace these principles are more effective in making their members fulfill their dreams and achieve their goals and empower the members to emancipate themselves. So you can go as deep as you want on netsoc.org, the website that we are building. You're also welcome to participate in our Facebook groups. And what I want to do now is to list quickly examples where rather than building a nuclear reactor that takes 30 years, 50 years, just to be able to calculate whether it was worth it economically, given the huge investment that it requires of billions of dollars locating it, to say nothing about the unsolved issue of course, the waste material created. Solar panels can be put everywhere, and anybody can decide on his or her own. I want solar panels on my house. I want to charge with solar panels my phone. It is the type of decision that anybody can make and very quickly see whether it was worth it. To say nothing about the fact that the speed of evolution of solar technology, making panels more and more effective, is incomparably more rapid than those of oil, natural gas, or other chemical energy sources of before. 3D printing is distributed manufacturing, where complexity is in the object, not in the equipment. And anybody who designs a complex object with a 3D printer can then spread that benefit through the network to everybody. In food production, water, soil, energy, transportation are more and more important components that, given that we cannot ignore externalities, we have to consider in how we grow food. Especially in the West, it is so common to be hypocritical and ridiculous in saying, yes, but we have to be careful, because if 1 billion Chinese and 1.2 billion Indians start to eat meat at the level of proportion in their calorie supply of Western diets, that Earth cannot sustain that. You know, it's crazy for several reasons. First of all, because it doesn't say anything about why shouldn't they do it the same, you know? Don't they have the right to do so? However, think about hydroponics, vertical farming, urban gardening. Even now, it is possible to 3D print meat, which not only is using 90% less energy, soil, water, it is in controlled environments where you do not have to use pesticides, where you can grow varieties in a manner and in a proportion that is just related to the individual. Imagine if in high rises, you could dedicate 1 story or 2 levels of the building to grow the food that is consumed in the building itself. Very importantly, it transforms agriculture from an activity whose output is proportional to the area occupied to one that is proportional to the volume. So it is not a problem anymore to feed not 7, but maybe 10 or 20 billion individuals on the planet, because it is not a question of how much soil we have available. Personalized health. The possibility of sensor-based personal devices like our phones making us aware of our state of health, enabling us to monitor it and to maintain it as far out as possible before the state of illness occurs, preventing that from happening, and really transforming health or medicine. Online learning, massive online open courseware, the possibility of, once again, through our phones, through our computers, to learn from the best teachers in the world, and then use local resources, local teachers to assist students to learn better. Finance is also a technology where it is popular to point the finger against the banks and financial technology for example, the latest financial global crisis. But you cannot, just as we cannot renounce the technology that gives us food, we do need our chemical agribusiness today, and we cannot stop using it the same way we cannot stop global financial technologies in today's world, but we can move beyond that. And cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin chiefly, are one example of how financial technology also evolves. Today, for example, 3 billion people are not only without a bank account. 3 billion people are fundamentally incompatible with the current banking system. If a fisherman in Indonesia wants to open the bank account, the first question is photo ID, date of birth. Neither of those is available to the fishermen in Indonesia, and there are 100 million of them. And with Bitcoin, anybody can transact economically on a global basis at a quality, at a reliability that is superior to the banks, and the only thing they need is a phone. And the fisherman in Indonesia has the phone. For the past 5 years, I did not sleep in hotels unless the conference that organized it really insisted. Everywhere I go, from Istanbul to Bangkok to Delhi, I stay at Airbnb. In contact with people, much better understanding the local environment than not the sterile 4 or 5-star hotel that tells me nothing about the local culture, and participating in a trust network that is much better in maintaining my security, in maintaining the quality of my experience than of any police force. And these trust networks are what the real value of Uber, of Airbnb, and of other online platforms is. And they compete not with the Hilton hotel chain. They compete not with the taxis. They compete with traditional police and military forces that are not able to provide the same services as these are. And the hardest of all is, of course, policy and politics. And whether we are able to discuss, enact, monitor, and modify legislation and regulation that is up to the speed required by technology. And the roadblock very often is the ignorance, sometimes the backwardedness, sometimes the corruption, or often just the feeling of powerlessness of the political class to do what they would be required to do. Because the confusion that they feel is shared by everybody. And they are not better than any of us. They just happen to have that job rather than being in some other job. And we look up at the political class pretending that they are better, but they are not. So it is up to us to help them understand and clarify these situations. Each of these examples that I gave you can be described as a fad, and often is, especially by the incumbents whose interest is to stop solar power or to stop Airbnb or Uber, and they will describe you what the risks are and that it is very dangerous. But we have to remember that technology is not a zero-sum game. We have 7,000 or 10,000 years of history to show us. Rather than being just a few million individuals as we were, Homo sapiens sapiens in the jungles, there are 7 billion people on the planet and we change it in unrecognizable. So what we need is a tool set to understand how we can live in the network society that is unstoppably coming, and how new organizations can empower people, can emancipate people through experiments and experiences that we can have, because there are zero barriers to entry. Nothing that I described is beyond any individual's ability to just act and learn, and as a consequence, in a very varied society, create more tolerance for different experiences. That is the basis of dignity for everybody equally participating in society, that is in turn necessary for creating resilient communities that feel that they are not swept aside, they are not exposed, they are not powerless, but they are empowered by these changes. Also, in my opinion, overcoming potentially what is now a false dichotomy between for-profit and non-profit initiatives. In a world where you cannot ignore externalities, no petrochemical company would be profitable. And so why should they? Their profitability is itself a lie, and the damage that they are causing, if it were counted in their balance sheet, would eliminate their profits. So what their shareholders are telling them to keep doing is not sustainable, is not meaningful anyway. Bureaucracies around the world recognize how dangerous this is to them, and they are mounting a resistance, often talking about protection of the consumer, precaution, but in reality hiding a state of panic, which similarly to how our immune system reacts and sometimes overreacts. If I'm allergic to nuts, my immune system will kill me rather than having me have 2 nuts. The first will be the last one. And similarly to that, there are now places, for example, Hawaii, one of the best places for solar energy on the planet. You cannot install solar panels anymore because the utility company said that the peak power cannot be absorbed anymore, so they cannot install anymore. Or the genetic tests that 23andMe can now extremely precisely and at low cost distribute are now prohibited in the United States unless there is a doctor to interpret the genetic test for you, or like the New York regulator for financial issues that drafted legislation imposing on Bitcoin startup higher compliance costs than those of the banks, evidently fearing the Bitcoin revolution more than any damage any bank could ever cause. So the unstoppable changes, however, mean that you cannot ignore them if you learn about them, and you cannot put up obstacles. You will be just swept aside. So this panic is useless. It creates no advantage. It only creates damage. it is much better to espouse, rather than the precautionary principle, what is called the proactionary principle, that takes into account the future benefit, which is much higher than the total sum of the future risk of these new technologies. And if we embrace that, the only question that is remaining is how each of us individually, as well as all together as society, do something rather than doing nothing. So this is the part that I took, which is now over. As I said, please keep in touch, even when I will have left Delhi in 48 hours. Participate online, but also feel free to continue these meetings, to reach out to one another, to people who maybe would have wanted to come but they couldn't. Refer to this recording, but also feel free to organize a meeting in a month or 2 months, whatever, if you think this is valuable. And going back in my projection, rather than this, nicely now moving to infinity, we will have a single camera, and on our stream, we will just sit together, and I will just sit here. Thank you. No, this is fine. Let's move together. Please come on. And I will ask you to comment and to tell me what you think. What maybe you have a question you want to open with, or something that you want me to talk about a little more in detail. And then I will definitely, I'm very interested to hear from you what you think about the framework in general and how you think it relates to India. How solar power can or cannot help, how other societies make decisions. I have some remarks that I will make to provoke further. So who wants to start? Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a general comment.
Yes.
Because I agree with most of the stuff you said, because I'm also very positive, and I hope that such things actually do happen in the future, and people do invest a lot in open technologies, so
Yes.
people can come together. The question I have to ask is about regulation.
Yes.
Because one of the biggest problems since internet started was regulation. People have such good ideas, and they have a lot of like Facebook, for example. Facebook started for people to actually come together and start a good social network. But then now they're trying to sell our private conversations to third parties. And
Yes.
so sooner or later, there's always this section that messes up when it comes to regulation, or they were trying to also sell internet.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is how, even if the whole world comes together and decides, okay, this is a great idea, let's all work on different technologies that can help the world. And
Yeah.
we move forward for a couple of years, and then after 3 years, there'll still be a glitch.
Absolutely. So my answer to this is twofold. First, I will comment on the internet, and then I will give a more general approach. So internet technologies used to be totally open and symmetrical with respect of who participated. There was no such a concept as a client and a server, for example. Every computer was the same. And in technology, this is described as peer-to-peer networks. But there were so many nodes in the network that not every node could have an individual number identifying it. The protocol is called IPv4 that caused this problem. And in order to keep connecting nodes to the network, this symmetry was broken. And when you were behind a local area network rather than in the open internet, you didn't have a unique number. Today, we have a new protocol called IPv6, and it is very important and very advantageous to re-establish this symmetry, because that will further advance the possibility of designing and deploying distributed and decentralized applications. Next generation social networks, there's no reason should be centralized like Facebook. And when they are decentralized, all the vulnerabilities regarding privacy disappear. One of the reasons why chat applications are becoming so popular, like WhatsApp or Snapchat or WeChat in China, for example, is because their architecture potentially allows this. And the general comment is that regulations used to be designed and adopted in a top-down fashion. And there was no alternative to do so. The technology to take into consideration the points of view of thousands or millions or billions of people, it was just not possible. Today, not only it is not necessary to proceed this way, but we have to be extremely skeptical and critical of any procedure that negotiates and adopts agreements that impact our lives, that does not take into consideration points of view that are not from the government or from industry, points of view of the civic society. And that is what is happening now. The so-called Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, the TIPS agreements, that are going to impact everybody in the world, are being secretly negotiated by the governments, and civic society is simply not admitted to the talks. And if you ask, sorry, can I know what you are talking about? No, the answer is no, and that's wrong. And I think that parliaments should not ratify that treaty that has been negotiated in secret. Not because it is bad or good, it could be good, it is the principle that is wrong. And so I think that future agreements, whether it is a technology protocol, whether it is a policy agreement, whether it's a trade agreement, should be much more transparent than they are today, and there is no excuse not to be so.
It's a little in continuation to what Sonali was talking about. From what I understand, she was also asking about who are the actors who will regulate. Her question probably is a little related to that. In an atmosphere where technology can potentially democratize things further, there's also a potential threat as to what becomes the platform at which these exchanges happen.
Yeah.
Like in a democracy, a government is supposed to be formed by a representation of the people. What is that platform that can be put in place for technology, for a democratic dialogue on technology?
So here, I think that we have to differentiate between what and how, right? It is important for government to design what is being mediated by technology, but not get into the details of how it is being mediated. And I can give you a very clear example. Facebook allows you to post anything. And it used to be the case that when you posted a YouTube link on Facebook, there would be a nice big window with an arrow, and you could play the YouTube video in Facebook. Then, magically, that experience was degraded. Now when you paste the YouTube link and you click play, a new window opens up, goes to YouTube, and you play it there. Because Facebook, in the meantime, developed its own video technology, and it makes it better for you, and so it is reprogramming you to think less of YouTube and to think more of Facebook. And this is exactly how it should not happen in a democratic civic platform. So it is a video, it should play nicely in the platform, and other people can build a better platform. But government should not get into the platform business. It should say, okay, it is about obviously not videos, even if sometimes looking at the debate and recording the video and then annotating the video could be also interesting. It is about policy, it is about voting, it is about traditional things that governments do. And the technology platforms through which we do those activities should be neutral. However, how they are implemented should be left up to competition, as long as I can reliably express what I say, as long as what I express is then aggregated and then taken into consideration. But we have still a very, very long way before that becomes possible. Open data is a very, very important first step. And open data and transparency of government operations on any levels. There is a lot of talk about smart cities, for example. Smart cities cannot work without interoperable systems, where if I'm the gas company and I have a three-dimensional map of where my gas pipes are, and my maintenance is incredibly efficient because of that, and comes the phone company and says, you know what, rather than having the cables in the air, now we are going to put them underground, and it is much better for many reasons. Well, the phone company should be able to get access to the data of the gas pipes in order to maximize the efficiency of their excavations too. But today, this doesn't happen. And the same way with all other data sets, interoperability and the ease of access is a mandate, for example, for government that is very good. In Italy, something incredible happened just a month ago. For the first time in 60 years, a constitutional amendment was voted at unanimity by Parliament. It was introduced by a friend of mine, and it imposes this kind of interoperability. Because, for example, healthcare in Italy is decided on a regional level, but systems were not interoperable. So when somebody moved from one region to another, their health data couldn't move with them. And there was a lot of corruption around the benefit of recreating the data once more. Because a lot of people made money, but of course it was totally useless work. It contributed to nothing. I didn't get less ill because those systems didn't talk to each other. And now it is compulsory that those systems talk to each other. So that is how I see the role of government and regulations, of defining what, but not defining the how. Yes.
Just more on your example on Italy. So was that a technological innovation? I know part of it was
No, it was
government.
the Italian example.
Yeah, the Italian.
It is a policy innovation.
Okay.
So the policy before was that
They couldn't exchange information.
that it wasn't compulsory. It wasn't compulsory. And since it was to their corrupt benefit not to talk to each other, nobody spoke to each other. Now the policy is that they have to talk to each other. If I am a health organization in region B, and you are a health organization in region A, and you say, "Can I access your data?" I cannot refuse the request.
So this is one instance where policy was the roadblock. There could be technology that can prevent two systems from talking to each other as well.
Well, and then those must be overcome.
And
You know,
the responsibility in that case of the respective government.
in this case, the starting point is policy,
Okay.
and then technology follows.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the
It can be
opposite,
the
right? Sometimes, often it's the opposite, but in this case, it was policy. So Can I ask you a question? You went to Singularity University, and talking about exponential technologies is the bread and butter there. This view is complementary to that. It talks about networks and how interconnected exponential communication and technologies point in the direction of decentralized systems, distributed systems. Do you find this view compelling? Do you think that it can have an impact as the things that we learned at SU taught you?
Yeah, it's very relevant, like from countries like India or for developing nations are involved. Because when we're talking about innovation in countries like India, where every 50 kilometers, everything is different, the culture is different, the language and everything.
Yeah.
So we need to be more focused on the local innovation and what's happening, the factors which made the problem to solve the local center. Because what is important here might not be important in the next point.
Yeah.
So but some point could be relevant. There has to exist a network of what works where, what doesn't work where, to have a better connectivity and to more lead the innovation.
Yeah.
And second, I would like to point it's very easy to build excellent product for at a high price, and to build a low, not so efficient product at a low price. But the challenging thing is to build excellent product at extremely affordable rate.
Yeah.
That's where the real challenge is. And I think that's where, when we talk about local problems, at the very bottom of the pyramid comes in, because they are the people who are facing the problem, comes up with a solution, which is an innovation, like a grassroots innovation. That if we can share at a global level, that can impact not only that particular area, but can impact anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and that is a very good point. And sometimes technologies are announced, and then they don't develop at the rate that it was expected, or they are surprisingly slow in going from the laboratories to the hands.
Lab to field takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. So what I'm doing now is to taking a look at our Q&A, if I can find it, because we might have questions. No? Good.
My sisters are watching this.
Oh, here it is. No. Okay. So if you don't mind, I will read these questions because people have also voted on them. Let me just turn off the volume, otherwise there's a feedback loop. So Aditya is asking, solar technology is not yet as effective or replaceable as nuclear from my current understanding. Could you point to more statistics about the usefulness of solar panels to every home rather than add nuclear reactors to each city? So I will thank you for the question, and what I will do, I'm not in the right place. How do I go to the right place? Sorry. Because I can actually hit a button and then, I think I know. And then there will be a placeholder in the stream, and that will be the place where the question is answered so that anybody can jump there. So I'm selecting this question and then giving my partial answer. So my point of view is that nuclear is extremely expensive, whose returns come in 20, 30 years. If you start building a nuclear reactor today, for 20 years you don't know what's going on. You just start building a lot of concrete, a lot of people, maybe a lot of jobs that politicians love, but you don't know whether you took the right decision for 20 years before you start pumping electricity out of the nuclear reactor. The second issue is that the waste management is still unsolved. And deciding today that we should go nuclear is, just postponing that issue. So it is probable that nuclear will be part of the picture tomorrow, especially if we can do fusion, whose waste is much less than fission, which we cannot yet. But I think it is undeniable that for the individual, and today, especially in places that are not connected to the grid, battery technology together with solar is a ready solution. And it is becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Maybe it is for, just for a few lights in the night for a village that didn't have any before. Maybe it is just for charging the mobile phone that couldn't be charged. Maybe it is not in a city that certainly will not turn off electricity for all its uses at once. But solar is for billions of people the right way to go. Okay, so yes, I'm about to read it.
If I can interrupt, it's something in relation to what you just said. A lot of time, solar energy is portrayed as being the last mile connectivity kind of an issue, addressing only the last mile connectivity, which to a business mind would it would beg this question: that is it only for last mile connectivity, or can it have large scale commercial application? Yeah. So where are we on that?
Yeah. So thank you for that, because actually it reminds me that one of the smartest companies on the planet, as measured by their market capitalization and as measured by their cash reserves, Apple Computers announced less than a month ago that they will spend close to $1 billion to create a solar plant in a desert area that will generate clean, renewable electricity to power all their stores and all their data centers in California. Okay? So I think that this is a very easy example to point to. You know, somebody can say, oh, Apple, they are stupid. Look at all the mistakes they make. Oh, okay, maybe, I don't know. As measured by their business success, they are smart. So it's not a guarantee that everything they will do will be a move of genius, but it is worth giving them the benefit of doubt. Okay, if Apple does it, then maybe it is not stupid. Maybe we could do it too. And so
that's very encouraging, because this is what you shouldn't compartmentalize a particular energy source based on what is its end consumer's currently.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the questions from Shubha Gokale. What role do you think Bitcoin will play in regards to national governments? It seems like it will take away much power from such institutions. So that is a wonderful question, and the answer is yes. The world has a global currency, and it is not right that this global currency is the US dollar. There is no national government that should accept the US dollar as its global currency, because it is definitely and uniquely to the advantage of the United States of America. And the fact that it is backed up by the largest military force in the world. So if somebody wants to stop using the US dollar as for oil trade, for example, maybe they will find it harder to do other things, or maybe they will find a conflict that will have them reconsider. And if India or China or Russia came up with a scheme and they said, okay, we can make a better global currency, everybody else would say, no, we don't trust you. And everybody else would be right. Nations have been born in order to protect their particular interest in a historical era when there was no alternative. But today, anybody can trade with anybody else, and that benefit goes beyond the particular interest of any given nation, and that benefit goes directly to the individual. And Bitcoin is the answer, because nobody should trust Bitcoin, and nobody has to. There's the source code. There is no national currency where you can go to the source code. Actually, central banks are proud of how opaque their decision making is. You should never know what the central banker will declare in a month in advance. If not, you are exploiting that in the financial markets. So compare the two things. Bitcoin is so transparent that you can go at the source code. Central banks are so opaque, they are proud of it. There cannot be anything farther from each other. But Bitcoin, by not being trusted by anybody, can be embraced by anybody because it's totally neutral. It favors nobody. It moves totally independently from anybody according to its own algorithm. And it is undermining the power of national governments in managing their currency, in managing from a macroeconomic point of view their policy. And obviously, this is a huge hurdle for those national governments to overcome. And I forgot to press the button. And so Bitcoin is already a global currency. It is just a question of how fast in its exponential spreading it will become accepted as an unstoppable force by banks, by merchants, by corporations, and then they will be the last. National governments, there are governments which officially already use the US dollar as their own currency, rather than having a national currency. Those will be the first. Those will be the first to recognize, well, we already gave up our financial or currency self-determination to a foreign government. Well, we'd rather give it up to an algorithm that at least we know is neutral.
Quick question. A little about the politics of it all. As you mentioned in your lecture, any new idea will have a reaction, an immune reaction. And right now, what Bitcoin faces from governments across the globe is that knee-jerk reaction. Now, one of the things I have always thought is a very good idea is to have certain people on board as you progress towards. While Bitcoin is a very, as you mentioned, a very transparent system, and central banking is completely opaque, maybe there has to be a mix of the two somewhere. I don't know, because otherwise, for a long time, currencies, cryptocurrencies as they are known, will keep facing opposition from governments whose influence is not going to wane anytime soon. So yeah. I'm asking more from the politics
sure.
point.
Sure. Here in India, it was very interesting because the Central Bank of India issued a report that was inspired by a European Central Bank report. And it was very normal, saying Bitcoin is this and this, and there are risks related to especially the value of Bitcoin. There is no guarantee that the value of Bitcoin will go up or down, and no bank should, for the moment, take it as a collateral, for example. Or no bank should open a Bitcoin-denominated account. Very, very plain things. And as I said, just a few months after the European Central Bank, also the Indian Central Bank did this. And the day after the European Central Bank issued that report, nothing happened. The day after the Indian Central Bank issued that report, every Bitcoin-related exchange's chief executive in India was detained by police to be questioned. And, you know, I wasn't there, and they weren't laughing. And the fact that this makes me laugh is not right. But still it makes me laugh because it is evidently a political difference. You know, why? Why do you bring that guy in for a question? He did nothing wrong. Yes, he pissed off the central bank of India, yes. But does this mean that he's a criminal? No. And you as a police force have so many other things to take care of. Leave him alone. It's fine. And so, yes, a few days later, luckily, they were released. Nobody went to jail, and everything went back to that. But this was a concrete example of really an overreaction. Like, no problem. And at the same time, banks. I have spoken with several banks and several bankers and several people in very large banking institutions who are designing new financial instruments that take Bitcoin as a given, as a basis, and then on top of Bitcoin, they create new ways of conducting their traditional business or new businesses that could not be conducted before. And this is very, very exciting, very, very interesting. You know, there are parliaments that are already talking about Bitcoin, and there were hearings, and London, for example, says they want to become the Bitcoin capital of the world. So they want to enact policy that is absolutely Bitcoin friendly rather than going against Bitcoin. So Shubha thanks us with another question, but that's fine. Thank you, Shubha. I mean, she says, thank you so much for answering the question. I really appreciate it. And it's a question. So we'll select and click on done. And so there's another question. How many staff in Network Society presently and future plans? Will this work with Singularity University or independently? So that was, oh yeah, okay. That is Siddhartha Verma, which I want to thank because he selected this venue, and I want to thank you as well. Thank you for this wonderful venue. We wanted a Wi-Fi and it's working wonderfully. We wanted a projector and it's working well, and we will drink and eat and thank you with that. So today we have 22 ambassadors in 17 countries. These are not staff, these are volunteers. Our nonprofit based in London with global reach is very new, and we are looking forward to find ways to go beyond what we are already being able to do today. As far as Singularity University is concerned, absolutely we will be working in parallel with Singularity University. We are not a division of Singularity University, but our thinking is embraced and also spread among the alumni. And I gave a talk at Singularity University last year, and hopefully I will go back and give another one this year. We'll see. So definitely we are working with that together. So those were the questions, and those were the questions from our live audience. And thank you. I will definitely go there as well. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It'll be like I'll talk about something about India's story. As we know that we have a new government here, and that government is understanding of this government is that this government is very pro technology, and they want to bring everybody in for the technology and stuff. But then there's the other side of it where people are saying that it's already 60 years and you did nothing for us, the other governments that were before that. And so you fix today first, and then you think about future tomorrow.
Okay.
So this today versus tomorrow conflict is stopping government from doing a lot of things.
I understand, and of course, I am an outsider, and as such, I apologize if anything I say is based on ignorance of local situations. it was the case, for example, that there were studies that showed how it would be literally impossible to bring telephone service to Africa because the world's copper production was not enough to lay down the cables that the huge continent would need. Africa is incredibly big. And this study said, okay, from Cairo to Johannesburg and all across, there's just not enough copper in the world. And they were not, at the time, taking into account mobile phones and mobile technology because we don't need copper cables anymore. And there is a 60% mobile phone penetration in Africa today. Next year is going to be 80%, and the year after it's going to be 100%. And of course, smartphones are now substituting feature phones. And the comparison that we make often is today somebody with an internet-connected smartphone has a better access to information than not the President of the United States 20 years ago. So, technologies that are advanced can be already deployed. For example, if I remember correctly, there was, a few years ago, a huge auction for 3G phone technology in India. And the reason that auction went badly is not because of technology. The reason there was a lot of scandal a few years later of how that auction was conducted and what was the consequence of that created damage. Created damage in terms of 3G being late, and now the world is on 4G and LTE and whatever else, created damage to the innovation ecosystem of startups that could not start and develop and deploy all the cool apps for the local needs. And of course, created the damage of reputation for Indian democracy overall in not being able and properly handle something like this. And in many, many ways, it is, sometimes it is really hard, but sometimes actually it's pretty easy to make those decisions. So the question to ask is, why those who represent the issues as being on one hand, on the other hand, and make decisions harder, what is their interest? Because sometimes confusing things, making things harder than they appear, is hiding an interest itself, while making decisions in a more streamlined fashion, clarifying things, not confusing things, would damage those interests. So that is why that is represented that way.
The general apprehension is that it will take away the jobs. Employment, employing 1.2 million people.
So and I can once again I can only apologize. I have been only here for 48 hours, but I did see today two people walking close to the India Gate. One of them was sweeping the leaves, and the other was collecting the leaves with a paper cardboard thing that wasn't appropriate, but probably it made them work slower. And it was better to work slower, because if they worked faster, then sooner or later somebody would come and would say, oh, you did this so fast, so one of you is not needed now. One of you is now unemployed. But I think this is the opposite of the kind of reasoning that should be done, because these were young, probably very well educated people that should not be sweeping leaves. And I don't know, I don't have the knowledge to give a specific answer what they should be doing, but there's so much better that could be done than putting two persons sweeping leaves on a street rather than doing something else. And yes, technological unemployment is a real issue, but not for a long time, especially in a society that has so much to achieve. You know, there's so much that can be done and will be done here, and there's so much human smarts that are still needed to do all those things, that technological unemployment is not going to be a problem, especially in the lower and middle classes. Now, there are some things that are potentially under threat. For example, Indian call centers should think immediately what to do with all those people who are very well educated, but Western consumers will be served through automated dialogue systems very, very soon. The speech recognition of Siri and Android and Cortana from Microsoft are exceptionally good today, so good that it is now feasible to base dialogue systems, conversational interfaces on them, and talk to somebody who doesn't know how to change his printer cartridge or whatever thing. And what is today done through those call centers is going to be not decimated. It's going to be just go away. It will go away. So if those companies are not thinking about that right now, that is a big problem. And the answer, I think, is not less technology. Those call center employees should not go back sweeping leaves on the street. The answer is more technology. They should start coding apps. Oh, here is a good example. Nowhere else in the world you see a poster advertising a local app, like in the subway in New Delhi, where the app is available on 3 platforms simultaneously, on Android, iPhone, and Windows Mobile. Nowhere. The reason is because teams here have resources that nobody else has. And you can put somebody, develop a Windows Phone version, even if it is just 1 or 2% of the market. That's fine, you can do it. So there should be apps for Windows Phone developed by India for everybody and for every other platform as well. And it's just an example. So what I suggest is I stop the stream now. Thank all of you for participating, and thank the audience for the questions. Saying goodbye. Thank you very much. Okay.